Yeah.
Hello, I'm Helen Good of the Elizabethan Star Chamber Project, making sense of the National Archives class Stack 5. Once again, some of the generous and talented members of the Beyond Shakespeare Company have taken time out from recording every play written in English before the Civil War to read some Star Chamber with me. Following the Beyond Shakespeare method, we're just going to read some text and then discuss it. Today, we're looking at the problems of the Fellowship of English Merchants for the Discovery of New Trades, generally known as the Russia Company. And they are trying to preserve their monopoly in Hull. So, reading for us today, we have a complete change, which I have failed to note. I got it. Reading for us today, we have as John Lewes, the town clerk.
Hi, I'm Alan Scott, and I'm based in Suffolk.
As John Gregory, an alderman and the previous mayor of Hull, and also Edward Cook, a merchant, we have
Emma Kemp, I'm an actor and I'm in London.
a reading William Hudson, a mariner.
Me, I forgot to unmute again. Hi, I'm Eric and I'm here.
Reading John Thorneton, an alderman and merchant.
Sarah Blake.
Reading William Wilson, alderman and merchant, and John Hewardine, a servant.
Rachael Nicole, actor on the East Coast.
And reading Richard Jackling, the common officer of Hull and marshal of the Court of Admiralty there.
Briony Sparrow, actor in Lincolnshire.
And most of them will be reading at least one of the sets of questions that are put to the other witnesses. Okay. Now then, first we have the examination of Edward Cook of Kingston upon Hull, merchant, one of the Fellowship of English Merchants for the Discovery of New Trades. He is of the age of 33 years and has been sworn. He is appearing on the part of the Fellowship concerning the matter and controversy between the same Fellowship, who are the complainants, against John Gregory, late Mayor and Admiral of the same town and port of Kingston upon Hull, the defendant.
Do you know that it's a ship of the town of Bergen in Norway, whereof John Ellis, Englishman, was master under God, laden with cloth and other commodities of this realm of England, did in the year 1579 sail from this realm unto a town called Karoulla in Lapland?
There was a ship, which I heard was of Bergen in Norway, whereof one John Ellis, an Englishman, was master under God, and it transported cloth out of this realm of England in Anno Domini 1579 unto a place called Karoulla in Lapland.
Who sailed in that ship for merchant, pilot, and purser during the voyage, and at what time of the year did the ship arrive there?
I know no other merchants but those which sold the goods, William Holmes, William Hudson, and John Ellis. Also, William Hudson was pilot to that place, and the ship arrived at the port of Karoulla in the month of June.
What kind of goods do you know, or have you heard say, that the ship did bring to Karoulla and discharge on land and sell there? And of what value were these goods?
The ship had in her, that I saw, English cloth and wine, 30 cloths, and 1 pipe of bastard. And by report, I heard that there were 60 cloths more, but of my own knowledge, I know not. Nor do I know of what value the goods were.
Who were the owners and factors for the owners of the same goods thither brought and there sold?
I do not certainly know who were the right owners of the goods, saving one Francis Cherry, who was owner of parcel of them, and William Hudson, William Holmes, and John Ellis were factors for the rest of the goods.
What kind of goods and what quantity were laden in the said ship at the said town during the time she was there, and of what value the same goods were?
There was laden into the ship at Karoulla oil, losh hides, tallow wax, and salmon to the quantity of 35 tons of oil, 3,500 salmon to the value of 2 last, 250 losh hides, but what quantity of tallow I know not, nor of what value these goods were.
Is the town of Karoulla within the jurisdiction of the Emperor or King of Rusland? To where is the toll and head money paid there, and what religion be the people there?
I do verily think that the town of Karoulla is under the jurisdiction of the Emperor or King of Rusland, for that the toll and head money there is paid unto the Emperor by the Rus that therein inhabit, and I do think the same people to be Christians.
Do you know or have you heard that the goods provided in the town of Karoulla and laden in the ship of Bergen were from there carried to Bergen, there discharged and reladen in a ship or pink, so thence from thence in the same ship or pink transported to the port of Kingston upon Hull?
Otherwise than by report, I know not, saving that I have heard that some part was reladen into a certain pink at Bergen, and so transported to Hull. I do better believe the report to be true, for that I did see goods discharged out of the pink at Hull, which I knew to be the same goods laden at Karoulla into the ship of Bergen.
You know that in October last past, 1579, Richard Jackling, Marshal of the Admiral Court in Kingston upon Hull, upon a warrant to him directed from John Lewes, town clerk of Hull, and to him delivered by William Hudson and John Fairweather, aldermen of the town, and Henry Cocknage, one of the factors of the fellowship, to seize and arrest all such goods as were in the pink within the haven of the town, did thereupon seize, arrest, and attach 40 barrels and 30 hogsheads of oils, and 12 barrels of salmon, which were taken on land or into a light, whereinto the same oil and salmon were discharged.
Richard Jackling, by a warrant delivered to him from John Lewes by John Thorneton, John Fairweather, William Wilson, or Henry Cocknage, did arrest certain of the said goods at the Staith of Anne, Saltmarsh of Kingston upon Hull, and also some other part of the goods in a lighter. I did hear the warrant read at the end, whereof the people say, God save the Queen. I have heard say that Richard Jackling went aboard of the pink and did arrest all the goods remaining in her. But whether the mayor did give his consent thereunto, I cannot say.
You know or have you heard say that the said oil and salmon, which were in the lighter, were carried to the common warehouse, there taken up and placed in a cellar hired of one Thomas Humphrey, the farmer of the wool house? And did not the said Thomas promise before you and other witnesses that the said goods should be surely kept? And did not Cocknage fasten and hang one lock on the door, and Richard Jackling one other lock of the same door?
Certain of the said oil and salmon was arrested in a lighter, and upon the stave was taken up and carried into a common warehouse called the wool house, and there laid into a cellar of Thomas Humphrey, who promised that they should be safely kept. And I have heard that Cocknage and Jackling did either of them set a lock upon the cellar door.
Did not the said Richard Jackling, the same day at afternoon, seize all the rest of the goods, and was not John Gregory informed that they which sued to have the said arrest made, did lack help to land the goods, and did not they, for the lack of such help, require his aid and assistance, being mayor of the said town and admiral in the port?
I have heard that Thorneton, Wilson, Fairweather, and Cocknage did, after the arrest of the goods in the lighter, go unto John Gregory, but what request they made, I do not know. I did see Richard Jackling go into a keel in Hullhaven the same day in the afternoon to arrest certain oil which was in the keel, but what quantity I know not. And I did hear that Mayor Gregory was informed that they did lack help to land the goods, and likewise did hear that Henry Cocknage did require of his aid and assistance for the landing of the same goods.
Did not Cocknage afterwards inform the mayor, John Gregory, that the 2 locks which were hanged upon the said cellar door were broken or taken off, and that the goods were carried from thence by porters, contrary to the said seizure, attachment, or arrest? And was request then made to John Gregory that the goods might be stayed by justice, according to the seizure, attachment, or arrest? And had not he at some time before that complaint given counsel or consented for the carrying away thereof, as you know, think, or have heard? And what did he for administration of justice in the stay of the said goods? And whether have you known or heard that the said goods were carried away for lack of justice or stay, contrary to the said arrest of the default of the said John Gregory, or not?
I have heard that Henry Cocknage did inform John Gregory that the 2 locks which was hanged upon the cellar door, wherein the said goods were laid, were taken or broken off, and that the goods were being carried away, and requested him that they might be stayed by him. But otherwise than by report I cannot depose, saving that I believe in my conscience that for lack of justice the goods were carried away.
Well done, everybody. A complicated little story, but what I really need to know now is what words and concepts were so alien to you that we need to understand them better. Rachael.
So, why is the religion of the people of Rusland that they are trading with, why is that pertinent to this case?
My guess is that somewhere in the incorporating documents of the Russia company, it says that they are dealing with all Christian subjects of the Emperor of Rusland, or words to that effect. So they need to check that they're not dealing with Turks. I don't know. That's what I imagine. Eric.
My only question is, what's a pink? Because I was like, why is the color in here? But obviously it refers to some sort of boat or
it's a very shallow draft. It's a boat that could be beached.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's just a type of small boat. Pinks were good on shelving ground. Sarah.
I have a couple of questions. The first one's quite quick. What are losh hides?
Losh is Russian for elk.
Oh, okay, nice.
I once said to a Russian specialist, I said, Hull was dealing a lot with Russia. They were bringing in elk hides, which for some reason they called losh hides. And he looked at me as if I was insane and said, that's possibly because losh is Russian for elk.
That would do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So a losh hide is an elk hide. This was the strongest, toughest leather known.
Oh.
I mean, with elk hides, you could really make sturdy stuff.
My second question was just more about my understanding of the case as a whole. I understand what's going on in terms of, it's the goods have gone to Hull and they've been seized, but I'm not entirely sure like why they're being seized, because like they were on their way, or they went to Karoulla via Norway, and then they came somehow ended up in Hull and they shouldn't have been there and they were seized, but like I'm not entirely certain why that's happened. Or do we even know?
Alan, do you want to go with that, or?
Well, my thought was that this is actually a falling out among thieves. Sorry, merchants. And it's hard to tell the difference sometimes.
I don't, yes. What it is there were two types of monopoly. There were commodity monopolies, which was just a way of the government taxing people, so that Essex got the monopoly of sweet wines, the Earl of Essex, which meant that without the government having to put its hand in his pockets, he was given a very, very nice source of income, which he collected as a tax on everybody who dealt in sweet wines.
Oh, right.
Now, that was one sort of monopoly, and of course that was tremendously unpopular, and there were all sorts of problems about it in Parliament. The second sort had a better rationale to it. The idea was that if you put a lot of work into a process or built up a business, you ought to have a monopoly on it in order to encourage you. And the Russia Company was like the East India Company. You got this monopoly. So you would go to the government and say, I have discovered an enormously wonderful new way of making saltpeter. Can I have a 10-year monopoly on it to make it worth my while to develop it? Now, I mean, you can see the logic to that. Now, Russia at this time did not have a Baltic port. So these people were going to the north of Norway. They were going right up to Archangel. They were going where the World War II convoys went. They were going where the fishing boat, the Gull, went down. And as far as Russia was concerned, if the emperor approved, they would deal with anybody. But for an Englishman, no Englishman, unless they were free of the company, had paid their dues and were members in good standing, was allowed by law to trade with Russia. Now, what the people in the William of Hull are doing is pretending that they're dealing with Norway.
Oh, right.
So the ship was up there, collected the goods, came down to Bergen, transshipped, but you've got the same people in charge, and came over to Hull saying, look what we bought in Norway, which would have been legal.
Yeah.
But Edward Cook had been in Karoulla and had seen these goods, seems to have been taking notes. I mean, he really knows his stuff, and so they're claiming. I mean, obviously, they are what the Russia Company called interlopers.
So Edward Cook works for or is part of the Russia Company?
No, he is an independent merchant, but he is a member of the Russia Company.
Ah, right. Okay.
He's signed, he's paid his dues, he's been approved, he's in. Eric.
So how long would this kind of journey have lasted? Because obviously, like, I mean, there's some, like, obviously edible stuff or sort of consumables that would have spoiled on the journey, no? Or not?
Well, no. I mean, the salmon would have been preserved in some way. It would either have been full or shotten. So it was... So what you've got I mean, it may have been in pickle, it may have been in brine, it may have been dried, it may have been smoked. But it certainly wouldn't have been fresh salmon.
Interesting.
The oil would have been whale or seal or fish oil of some sort. Rachael, oh, Alan.
And there would only have been, given the latitudes you're talking about, there would only have been a relatively short window of opportunity to make this sort of trip, because effectively that part of the world would be icebound for 8 months of the year, probably at least.
Well, that's why they were there in June. I mean, it was one trip a year. Eric.
And the fellowship that we referred to was basically like sort of the fellowship of like is in the Russia company.
No, the fellowship.
Or that was a separate.
They called
sort of,
it, presumably when they had themselves incorporated, they hadn't quite decided what they were going to do. But they were for the discovery of new trades, but it ended up being Russia.
Okay, yeah.
So they were the Russia company, but they kept their old name.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, is everybody happy so far? Right. So we are now going on to the examination of John Lewes of Kingston upon Hull, gentleman and town clerk of Kingston upon Hull, at the age of 48 years or thereabouts, sworn and examined.
Did William Wilson and John Fairweather, aldermen of Kingston upon Hull, and Henry Cocknage, one of the factors of the Fellowship of English Merchants for the Discovery of New Trades, about the 3rd day of October last, 1579, require your advice for the seizure of goods that were in a pink called the William of Hull, whereof William Hudson was master, which goods were bought, bartered, and exchanged for other goods shipped out of England in a ship of Bergen in Norway, whereof John Ellis was master, at a town called Karoulla in Lapland, being under jurisdiction of the Emperor of Russland, and from thence brought in the said ship, whereof Ellis was master, to Bergen, and there discharged and laden again in the pink called the William of Hull, and in her transported to the haven of Kingston upon Hull by William Hudson and William Holmes, servant to George Aslaby of the city of York, or no?
William Wilson and John Fairweather, aldermen of Kingston upon Hull, and one to me unknown, whose name I have learnt is Henry Cocknage, a factor for the fellowship, came to me and told me that there was a pink called the William of Hull, and that there was in her certain goods or merchandises which were bought or bartered at Karoulla within the jurisdiction of the Emperor of Russland by such as were not free of the fellowship. And they delivered me a statute imprinted touching the liberties of the fellowship, desiring me to peruse the same. And for that, they did understand that I was to ride from home. They requested that I would set down my advice in writing how the goods might be arrested in my absence.
Did you, after you had perused the statute of Anno 8 of the Queen's Majesty, made for the fellowship, then showed unto you, say that you would make a note in writing? And did you not then award a warrant or other process to one Richard Jackling, Marshal of the Mayor's Court of Admiralty in Kingston upon Hull, to stay, seize, or arrest the said goods and every part thereof?
I said I would make a note in writing, but whether I did so say before I had perused the statute or after, I do not remember. And indeed I made a note in writing how Richard Jackling, the Marshal of the Admiralty, should arrest and stay the goods in my absence. And I gave it to Master Wilson and Master Fairweather, or to the one of them, desiring them to make Master Mayor privy thereto. But I made no warrant or process for the arresting of the goods.
Did not they, Thorneton, Wilson, Fairweather, and Cocknage, after such information made to John Gregory of the seizure, attachment, or arrest of part of the said goods, require of him that more of the said goods, being in the said pink, and 4 lasts of oil, then discharged out of the said ship into a keel, might likewise be seized, attached, or arrested, or no?
I don't know. I wasn't there.
Did you know or hear that any more of the goods were seized, attached, or arrested by the marshal? And was not John Gregory informed that they did lack aid to land the goods? And did not they, for lack of such help, require his aid and assistance, being mayor and admiral of that port, for execution of the said act, or no?
I don't know. I wasn't there.
Have you used to give a warrant in writing to the marshal for arresting and staying of any ship or goods without a warrant from the mayor being admiral, or no?
I have been registrar of the Admiral Court here 14 years or thereabouts. During that time I've used, upon complaint made to me, sometime by note in writing without seal, sometime by word of mouth, and sometime by privy token, to give orders to the Marshal of Admiralty there to arrest and stay ships or goods without any warrant had from Master Mayor as Admiral, without making him privy thereto until the arrest were made.
Did not Cocknage or some other complain afterwards unto the John Gregory that the company of the Pink had discharged some of the said goods into keels of York or other vessels contrary to the arrest, and therefore did he require John Gregory to cause them to be stayed to answer the law, either by ordinary justice of the town or by process of admiralty? And how often was such request made unto him? And did not he, John Gregory, answer that he would not deal therein without special commandment from the higher powers, or used he any other speeches to such effect?
I don't know. I wasn't there.
Did not Cocknage afterwards inform John Gregory that 2 locks, which were hanged upon a cellar door, which the Cocknage had taken, to lay in 40 barrels and 3 hogshead of oil, were broken or taken off, and that the goods were being carried from thence by porters contrary to the arrest? And was not request then made to John Gregory that the goods might be swayed to answer to law, and not to be carried away? And did not Gregory, in fact, consent to the carrying away? And were the goods carried away for lack of justice or stay, contrary to the said arrest, or no?
I don't know. I wasn't there.
Had John Gregory any part in the ship or goods, or was he to have any part or profit? Or had he had any other thing given or promised him for suffering of the goods to be conveyed, as you think or have heard?
Not to my knowledge.
Helen, you're muted.
Thank you. Not what you might call a cooperative witness, our John Lewes. Yes, Alan.
Wasn't me, it was 3 other fellas and a Yorkshire Terrier.
Well, yes and no. I mean, Lewes works for the corporation. He's the town clerk. And he's asked, what does he know or what has he heard? Meaning, what has he credibly heard? And he isn't prepared to go into credibly heard. He's just saying, I can tell you what I saw. I can tell you what I did. The rest, I mean, the actual words used are, to this interrogatory, this deponent saith he cannot depose, over and over and over again. But fundamentally, he means, I don't know, I wasn't there. But yes, I mean, he doesn't want to take sides in this dispute. Sarah.
So, I mean, really, I mean, it's kind of quite funny when it's being read, because like, I don't know, I wasn't there, but really, he's actually being a very reliable witness, because he's not repeating anything other than what he actually knows to be factually true, which is what he did, and the people that he saw. So I mean, he's actually been quite quite good there, I suppose. Really, he's being quite reliable and not indulging in any kind of hearsay.
This is true. And I thought Edward Cook was pretty good too. I mean, he was saying, I have heard that there were 35 other cloths on board. I didn't see them. You know, I mean that you've got the two okay witnesses first. I may say the quality of the witnesses will deteriorate. Okay, now then. We have, oh, sorry, are there any more questions, any more comments, any more feelings? No? Okie dokie. The examination of William Wilson of Kingston upon Hull, merchant, alderman, and one of the said fellowship, aged 52, for the matters in controversy betwixt the fellowship of Merchants of England for the New Trade of the one party and John Gregory on the other party.
I think somebody might need to take third clerk because I am also William Wilson.
That is unfortunate. Is anybody free to take the, Alan?
Yeah, I'm free for a while.
Okay, Alan, you're third clerk.
Thank you. Did you or any other with Henry Cocknedge, one of the factors of the said fellowship, about the 3rd day of October last, 1579, require the advice of one John Lewes, Registrar of the Admiralty Court in the said town of Kingston upon Hull, for the seizing of all such goods as were in a pink or ship in the haven called the William of Hull, whereof William Hudson was master, brought into this realm contrary to the statute, made in the 8th year of the Queen's Majesty's reign that now is, by William Hudson and William Holmes, servant to George Asselby of the city of York, or no?
I, together with John Fallweather and Henry Cocknedge, did go to John Lewes to ask his counsel what we might do for the seizure of goods laden in a ship or pink in Hull Haven about the 3rd day of October 1579. But of whence the said ship or pink was, I certainly know not, but by report she was called the William of Hull, and by like report William Hudson was the master of her. And further, by report, the goods were bartered at Karoulla in Lapland for goods that were shipped out of England, and from thence brought in John Ellis' ship to Bergen in Norway, and there were discharged and reladen into the pink called the William to the haven of Kingston upon Hull, as it was reported. And if the report were true, they were transported contrary to the statute.
Did John Lewes, after he had perused the statute, say that he would make a note in writing? And did not John Lewes thereupon award a warrant or other process to Richard Jackling, Marshal of the Court of Admiralty there, to stay, seize or arrest the ship and goods? And was the process or warrant executed? And in what manner and upon what cause? And by whom was it executed? And whether did you or any other inform John Gregory thereof? And did not you or some other show him a printed book of an Act of Parliament for the corporation of the said Fellowship of English Merchants for discovery of new trades? And was not a copy left with him to consider of? And how long did he keep it, as you know or have heard?
To my remembrance, John Lewes did read over the statute, and after the reading thereof, he did deliver a note in writing to John Fallweather or Cocknedge, who delivered the note unto Richard Jackling, Marshal of the Admiralty here in Hull, to arrest the goods that were in the ship, who did go presently to arrest the same goods. And the cause of the arrest was because it was reported that the same goods were transported from Karoulla in Lapland. And after the delivery of the note to Jackling, He, together with John Fairweather and John Thorneton, merchants, both free of the said fellowship, did go to John Gregory, taking with them the copy of a statute for the corporation of the said fellowship. And then John Thornton or John Fairweather did read over the same statute to John Gregory, who could not read the same himself, and as I think, they did take the same statute away with them again, but I am not certain thereof.
Can I come in here a moment? Sorry to interrupt you. That's quite an important point there. John Gregory was illiterate. He's the only alderman in the entire reign who made his mark instead of signing his name. It is quite remarkable, I suppose, in some ways, that he got to the position he did, but he couldn't read. Thank you. Sorry about that. Third clerk, off you go.
Did you know or hear that the arrest was made? And was not John Gregory informed that they which sued for to have the said arrest made did lack aid to land the goods? And did you, or any other, require his aid and assistance, being mayor of that town and admiral of that port, for execution of the said act of parliament, or no?
I did hear that the goods were arrested, and after they were arrested, I and John Thornton, John Fairweather, and Henry Cocknage did all go to John Gregory to crave aid and assistance to get the same goods upon land.
Did not Cocknage or some other complain afterwards unto John Gregory that the company of the Pink had discharged some of the goods into keels of York and other vessels, contrary to the seizure or arrest, and therefore did require John Gregory to cause the same to be stayed according to the law, either by ordinary justice of that town, or by process of Admiralty, or some such other means as he thought best? And did not John Gregory answer that he would not deal therein without special commandment from the higher powers to the like effect?
I did hear Cocknage say to John Gregory that there were divers of the goods discharged into keels of York, and he requested John Gregory that he might have aid of him, who made him answer that he would not deal therein, except that he had commandment from the higher powers.
Did not Cocknage or some other inform John Gregory that 2 locks, which were hanged upon the cellar door, which the said Cocknage had taken to lay in 40 barrels and 3 hogsheads of oil, and other things, being parcel of the goods so seized, were broken or taken off the door, and that the goods were being carried from thence by porters, contrary to the seizure, attachment, or arrest? And was it not request then made to John Gregory that the goods might be stayed by justice, or by some other ordinary means, to answer the law according to the arrest, seizure, or attachment? And had John Gregory given his consent for the carrying away thereof? And have you known, or have you heard, that the goods were carried away for lack of justice and in default of John Gregory, or no?
I did hear from Cocknage that the locks set upon the cellar door were broken and the goods being carried away from the cellar. And John Waddy, keeper of the wool house, told me that before the locks were broken up, he went unto John Gregory and told him that widow Brotheriek and Christopher Ellis was come to break open the locks. And request was made by the Cocknage to John Gregory that they might be stayed to answer the law. And as for the staying of the same goods, the said John Gregory did nothing.
Had John Gregory any part of the said ship or goods to have any profit therein, either by way of adventure or common bargain? Or came any of the goods to his hands by bargain, gift, or reward, as you think, know, or have heard?
I do not know.
All right. So you get the impression of chaos in the haven. The Humber and the Ouse up to York will not take a ship, would not at that time take a ship. The Vikings did it, but there was too much silt by this time. So things for York were transshipped into lighters to go upriver. And there seems to have been a degree of chaos. And when Cocknage shouted, "Hey, you men, stop that man, he's going off with a barrel of salmon," nobody did anything. Alan.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm slightly confused by one bit, which is referring to the goods having come from Bergen to Hull in the Pink. And I
Yes.
got the impression from what you described the Pink as earlier, that this was more of a inshore vessel, almost like the sort of lighter that would have been used to take goods up the Ouse from Hull up to York.
No, it was bigger than a lighter. It was a small ship, but it had a shallow draft.
So in some ways, possibly similar in design to the Viking longships.
I very much doubt it, but possibly. To be honest, it's not one of my skills. I just looked the word up.
Right.
But it's a shallow drafted ship. Do people generally get the picture? There's Widow Broderick and Christopher Ellis, a crowbar and a couple of porters. The porters would what the Americans would call longshoremen. We would call dockers. Sarah.
I am wondering if Christopher Ellis is any relation to John Ellis.
I think it more than likely.
And I don't know who the widow Broderick is, but presumably she's in on it as well.
Well, Widow Broderick owned part of the goods.
Oh, right.
And she had paid landing duties, she had paid customs duties, she got her customs clearance form, and she wanted her duties. So with Christopher Ellis, 2 porters and a crowbar, she dealt with the problem. And the mayor knew it was about to happen because John Waddy was rushing to the mayor saying, "What do I do? There's this mad woman with a crowbar." And Gregory was saying, "Well, I don't know, the law's very difficult on this." Alan.
One thing that just struck me was the previous Star Chamber case we read also hinged on who'd been in charge of removing locks.
Yes, 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 yes. I mean, locks. Yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought about that, but you're absolutely right. Okay. Rachael.
At this time with ships, was it sort of the same, like how you would have in, I guess, American ports a little later on, where this like it would be divided up in parts and like shares of people who had right to the profit of the ship? Is that why the widow is hopping in here?
I think she's bought or had commissioned the purchase of part of the cargo. I mean, some of the cloth which went north, which was swapped for whatever they brought south, may have been hers. She's obviously part of the deal, or her family is. But yes, I mean, there was joint ownership of ships. There was joint ownership of cargoes. Because there wasn't much in the way of insurance, you were much better off owning 1/10 of 10 ships than owning all of one. Because until marine insurance arrived from Italy, you were you didn't want to put all your cargoes in one ship. Eric.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, like in place, like, you know, the Jew of Malta, or I don't know, some other place that we don't usually mention on Beyond Shakespeare.
No. I assure you, we are no longer on Beyond Shakespeare.
Yeah, okay.
Mention
Well,
away.
in that case, like, what is it? The
Antonius,
Merchant
his
of
name.
Venice, where you've got sort of, you know, Antonio puts all his, I think it's Antonio, puts all his sort of cargo in one boat, well, one fleet basically.
Yeah,
And
but
they
he
think,
says not all my goods are entrusted into one ship.
yeah, it is not wise, especially given they only have sails and sort of oars as opposed to.
Yes, and there's weather and there's pirates
Yes.
and foreign enemies. I mean, I'm trying to remember, I don't think any of, or maybe just one ship of the first fleet that went to Russia came back. Yeah.
I was just wondering, is piracy a concept by this time, or is it just
Good
sort
Lord,
of, you know,
yes.
because sort of there was obviously 18th century piracy, but like, you know, the golden age of piracy. But then that kind of...
No. I mean, the East Coast was full of pirates. There were the foreigners from Dunkirk. The Dunkirkers were notorious. But I mean, the local pirates, Cleethorpes was full of pirates. It was called Clee then. And Inglethorpes in Lincolnshire was known as Thieves' Creek. And the place was infested with pirates. But they were domestic.
Yeah.
And if they could get a regular legal job, they would.
Yeah. But like there wasn't the division between like privateering and piracy as there was much later.
Yes,
Oh, okay,
there was. Oh yes,
Okay.
there was privateering, but there was a sort of grey area as well. But,
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Are everybody ready to go? Yep, good. We now come to the main event, the examination of John Gregory, not a member of the fellowship, but alderman and recently ex-mayor of Hull.
Do you know that a ship called the William of Hull, having in her goods brought from Karoulla in Rusland, arrived at the port of Kingston upon Hull? And how did you first know of it?
I did not know of any such ship or goods till one calling himself Cocknage with Master Thorneton, John Fairweather and William Wilson did tell me of it, which was about 3 weeks after Michaelmas last, to my remembrance.
Did you not know that a warrant from John Lewes, registrar of the Hull Admiralty, was awarded to Richard Jackling, officer of that court, to arrest that ship and goods, and that the warrant was executed? And did not John Thornton, William Wilson, John Fairweather, and Henry Cocknage inform you thereof? And did not they show you an act of Parliament for the incorporation of merchants' adventurers for the discovering of new trades? And did they not leave a copy with you to consider of?
I did not know that any warrant was made by my clerk, John Lewis, to Richard Jackling, the officer for my Admiralty, to stay or arrest the goods and ships, until the Richard Jackling told me that he had been sent to stay them by the commandment of Master Thornton, Master Wilson, and Master Fairweather. And also Master Thornton and the others did tell me of it, who I did not credit, and especially as I thought that Lewis neither could nor would make any such warrant without making me, being mayor and admiral, first privy to it.
Did not Thornton, Wilson, Fairweather, and Cocknage require of you that more of the said goods in the ship and 4 lasts of oil discharged into a keel might likewise be seized? And what answered you? And did you not say you were contented and willed them to proceed so far as they did nothing against law whereby you might be touched or like to affect?
Thornton, Wilson, Fairweather, and Cocknage, to my remembrance, asked me if I would aid them about the seizure of the said goods. And I answered that if they gave bonds with sureties to make me harmless from all, I would very willingly yield unto the arrest. Otherwise, because I knew not whether the goods were to be seized by law or not, I would not meddle therein. So I did answer to this, or to the like effect, to my remembrance.
Did you know or hear that the rest of the goods were seized, attached, or arrested by the marshal? And were you not informed that they would sue for the said arrest did lack aid to land the goods? And by whose counsel, practice, or means was it? Or was it not by your counsel, means, encouragement, or consent? Practice, means, encouragement, or wait, one sec, sorry, I need to start the sentence again. And by those whose counsel, practice, or means was it? Or was it not by your counsel, practice, means, encouragement, or consent that they could not get any help to land the said goods? And did they not, for lack of such help, require your aid and assistance, being mayor of that town and admiral in that port, for execution of the arrest? And what did you answer? And did you not say you were ignorant and that you would stay for more counsel, and that you would not do it without good sureties to save you harmless against the law, or to like effect? Or for what other cause did you deny or forbear to assist them?
To my remembrance, I did hear by some of the parties there was other goods stayed, and that they looked to land those goods and needed aid therein. But by my means, counsel, practice, procurement, or consent, it was not. And I think they required aid of me, whereunto, to my remembrance, I answered that I was ignorant of the matter, and without counsel what I might lawfully do, and therefore I would not deal in it without good sureties to save me harmless against the law. And for no other cause did I forbear the same, but for fear of doing wrong to any or running in danger of the law.
Did William Wilson or any other offer you to be surety? And by whose suit, procurement, or means did you refuse or fail to give such assistance as was requested? And who did sue or labor to you, or advise you, or require you so to refuse or fail? And did you not say precisely that you would not deal with therein, come what will come of it, or to like effect? And what did you answer?
William Wilson did offer to be bound, saying, I will be bound for one, at which time John Fairweather went out of the company, and then I demanded of Mr. Thornton if he would be the other surety, that he would be bound, who answered that he would give the best counsel he could, but to be bound he would not. And as touching the value and credit of William Wilson, being at that time an alderman of Hull, I thought him not sufficient, for I did not know what value the ship and goods was of. And I do not remember that there was any that did sue to me, or advise or require me so to refuse or fail to aid them, saving one Rafe Aisleby that bought most of the goods in the ship, who said that the next day he would have the Queen's letters missive from my Lord President for it, which accordingly he brought and served it on Cocknage, as I am credibly informed. I did not, to my remembrance, say, I will not deal herein, come what come will, but did answer that I would not deal in it without good bonds to save me harmless, or other lawful authority for my warrant.
Did you not know, and especially did not Cocknage afterwards inform and complain unto you, that where he had taken a cellar, warehouse, or place, and therein bestowed 40 barrels and 3 hogsheads of oil, parcel of the said goods, or any parcel thereof, and 2 locks had been hanged thereon, that the locks were broken or taken off, and the goods were in carrying from there by porters, contrary to the arrest? And was not request then made to you that the goods might be stayed by justice to answer the law, according to the arrest, and not to be carried away?
Cocknage or some other did tell me that there was a cellar or warehouse wherein there was certain barrels and hogsheads of oil, parcel of the said goods, were in carrying from thence by porters or others, at which time I was again requested to stay the same. To which words, to my remembrance, I answered that I would consider of it and take advice, whereupon, as I could not perceive that there was any ordinary action entered, I did forbear to deal in it. Neither have I known or heard otherwise than by the parties that the goods were carried away for lack of justice.
Have you any part in that ship or goods or monies or any part or profit therein, whereby either by way of adventure, bargain, or otherwise howsoever? Or came any of the said goods, or were any of them promised to come to your use by bargain, gift, award, reward, or for or by any consideration or means to thence the arriving thereof? And for what consideration and by what means?
Neither I nor any to my use have or had any part in the said ship or goods, or any part of profit therein, or promised to come to my use by reward.
Okay, that's from Gregory's point of view. There he is, and his clerk's gone away. He has no legal advisor to tell him what is lawful for him to do. So he is very carefully sitting on his hands and doing nothing. He's got Ralph Ailsby, or whatever he's called, of York, buzzing in his ear saying, I'll have a letter tomorrow, fix this. Just hold off. And at the same time, he's worried that there may be a big court case over it, and that if he interferes, he may end up as the defendant. As it is, by not interfering, he's ended up as a defendant. Alan.
You mentioned that Gregory is the only mayor of Hull who signed with a mark during the period you've looked at. Was he a repeat offender as mayor, or just the one-off?
No, this is quite interesting. He's old. It's his first mayoralty, and he is very old. John Thorneton was mayor in 55, 66, and 77.
Mm-hmm.
So really, mid-30s is the optimum time. It's taken him a tremendous amount of time to become an alderman and mayor for the first time. He does actually become mayor for a second time, a second term.
So to a certain extent, it's Buggins' turn.
Oh, it's always Buggins' turn, but you don't get to be Buggins until you've achieved something. And he was very late in life in achieving the status. Possibly he didn't want it before, we don't know. But he certainly is very, very reluctant to do something that might put himself in danger, he says. On the other hand, we've got the owner of the most part of the goods that are partly in the lighter, partly in the wool house, partly here and there, constantly being moved around by people who have no rights to them or consider they have every right to them. He reckons by sitting on his hands, he's safest. But sitting on his hands has landed him in Star Chamber. Sarah.
Yeah, I maybe all will be revealed, but like, how is he the one that is having the case brought against him? Because yeah, it seems that all he's done really is go, oh, I don't know which side is right here, so I am just going to sit on my hands. So how is the case being brought against him rather than the people who actually did this?
Yeah, this is the Russia Company. They found Hull a bit of a pain because Hull had its own Admiralty jurisdiction. they couldn't just take out a warrant in London, as they would normally do, send it on a horse up to Hull and have a ship arrested. Because the warrant would arrive and Hull, including the members of the company in Hull, would turn it away. You had to, in order to achieve anything in Hull, the only way was through the mayor.
Right.
Because he was not only mayor of the port, mayor of the town, he was the admiral of the Humber.
So he's being sort of, this case is about obstruction.
This case is about, yes, his failure to do his duty.
Right, okay.
He should be stepping up, ordering the goods saved, making sure nobody breaks any locks, issuing commands left, right, and centre. And he's doing absolutely nothing. I mean, I have a view as to why he's doing it, which has very little to do with being afraid of legal difficulties, but I think he's miffed. I think these much richer, much more competent, much more literate aldermen are coming in and telling him what to do. Yeah. And also Jackling, poor fellow, has been given a piece of paper which has no legal validity at all. It's just notes. And he's been told by John Thorneton, a man he is accustomed to obeying, go arrest that ship, go arrest those goods. And he's gone and done it. But the mayor didn't know about it. And the mayor is effectively saying, look, you got us in this mess, you get us out. It's nothing to do with me. I never agreed to any of this. You should have come to me, not just got on with it. I'm supposed to be in charge. Well, if I'm not in charge, then I'm not in charge. Tough. But that's just my view. I see everything as very personal. Rachael.
Yeah, I was going to ask, so if somebody has given him a forgery, it's the law would still come after him for falling for the forgery, even being illiterate himself?
Yes, I mean, he wants to take advice from someone he trusts. He wants John Lewes back there, giving him counsel, because that's what he's paid to do. But he's off to some other town doing he's probably acting as clerk in some other commission on some other Star Chamber case, for which he's getting a nice little fee. But he's not in the town. Eric.
Well, I was going to ask does every town in England at this time follow the same system as London, whereby they had like one mayor per year, or like sort of?
It all depends on your charter, but mostly yes. If they have a mayor, I mean, an awful lot of townships were not incorporated. So the Lord of the Manor did his thing. But if you were incorporated, then you had, in Stratford, there were bailiffs, not mayor. But an incorporated town, I mean, Hull had an absolutely ace charter, which gave them all sorts of Admiralty jurisdiction, which very few other places had. Rachael.
Yeah, slightly, maybe not having to do with the case, but maybe why were mayoralities so short, and like why was the period, like why was there, so 1 year kept to that year?
Well, being mayor was expensive. It took you away from your business. These weren't professional politicians. So you were mayor, your wife was the mayoress, you processed to the church every Sunday. You had an open house for, various people were entitled to dine at your table. You were You entertained visitors to the town. You sat in courts, Admiralty court and the regular courts. So there was a lot to do in that year, and every one of them said it took it away from their. The mayor wasn't alone. It was the mayor and aldermen who made the decisions. There were 13 in total at this time, 12 aldermen, 13, one of which was mayor. And they made the political decisions, but a mayor did a lot of the work, overseeing searches of rope and leather and stuff, you know. So people didn't, certainly it would be very difficult to get someone to be mayor for more than 1 year. Any more for any more? Or shall we go on? Let's go on. Aha, right. The examination of John Hewardine, and he's aged 23 years, and he's a servant, which doesn't necessarily mean he swept the floor. He could be, he sold goods, sold and bought for him in far off Russian places. He's a servant to Thomas Hewitt of Swanland in the county of Kingston upon Hull, gentleman. No, sorry, the gentleman is Hewitt, not Hewardine. And also William Hudson of Kingston upon Hull, mariner of the age of 24 years. Now, it doesn't say anywhere that this is the same William Hudson who is the master of the ship. And I really don't know whether it is or not. There were an enormous number of Hudsons in Hull. And when they weren't naming bays in Canada, they were in shipping generally. All right, the fifth clerk, please.
Do you know, or have you heard, that about the month of October in 1579, that a ship called the William of Hull, whereof William Hudson was master, did arrive at the port of Kingston upon Hull with goods which were brought from Bergen in Norway?
I do very well know a ship called the William of Hull, whereof William Hudson was master, which about the month of October, Anno Domini 1579, did arrive at the port of Kingston upon Hull with goods which were brought from Bergen in Norway.
So do I.
Did you know or have heard that the said ship and goods, or any of them, were arrested in the port of Hull before or after the discharge of the said goods, and in what vessels or place were the same goods arrested or seized, to your knowledge?
I was present and did see Richard Jackling arrest goods which were in the ship called the William of Hull. And also, I also did know that certain goods in a keel of York being on ground at the Woolhouse Staith and goods in the catch lying at Saltmarsh Staith were arrested by Jackling the same day.
I did see goods arrested by Richard Jackling, being in a ketch lying at Saltmarsh Staith, and also goods remaining in the ship, and after that certain goods in a keel.
Who did arrest, seize, or attach the said ship and goods, or any of them, and by what authority or warrant was the same done? As you do know or have heard, and if the same was done by any warrant, then whether was the same written in English or in Latin?
Richard Jackling did arrest, seize, and attach the said goods as is aforesaid, and to the rest I cannot say.
Jackling made the arrest, and further I cannot say.
Did you know or have heard that there was a letter directed from the Lord President and Council of the North Part to Henry Cocknage, Richard Jackling, and others, commanding them to deliver the said goods, or else to appear and show cause why? And was the same letter delivered to the Cocknage or others, to your knowledge?
I did see the Queen's letter in the hands of Henry Cocknage, which, as I heard, was delivered to Cocknage by Ralph as Labby, which letter, as I think and have heard, was for the delivery of the goods.
I did see the Queen's letter in the hands of one Rolf Asleby, but which Ralph said was for the releasing of the goods so arrested, and likewise told me afterwards that he had served the said letter on the said Cocknage being in his bed.
Did Cocknage and others, or any of them to whom the letter was directed, appear before the Lord President and Council to answer the said arrest, seizure, or stay of the said goods, or what do you know touching the same?
Cocknage did not appear before the said Lord President and Council of the North, but went, to my knowledge, very shortly after the serving of the letter on him to London.
Okay. The Queen's letter is not, of course, the Queen's letter. It has not come from the Queen. It's come from the Lord President of the North and the Council of the North, which is a sort of subcommittee of the Privy Council, lives in York. At the bottom of at the top of the letter, it says by the Queen, and then it's, you know, we, having taken counsel with our Council of the North, blah, 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 command you to do this, this, this. And it's by the Queen, and then in small letters, and her council, meaning that it isn't from the Queen at all. It's from the Council of the North. But the Lord President had his own court. And so this letter that our friend Rafe, with an unpronounceable second name, has told the mayor about, has arrived, and Cocknage has had it served to him in bed, which I think is a nice touch. I personally believe that this Hudson is probably the master of the William of Hull, but it doesn't say. Yeah, the Council of the North is not in Winterfell, it's in York. Thank you, whoever put that in chat. Okay, is everybody happy with what's happening up to now? Good. So the last one, the examination of Richard Jackling, poor man, of Kingston upon Hull, Marshal of the Admiralty of the same town. He was also the common officer, that was his day job, of the age of 55 years. So for jumping in and out of ships, he's not in his first youth. Also, John Lewes of Kingston upon Hull, gentleman, at the age of 48 years. And John Thorneton of Kingston upon Hull, merchant, of the age of 60 years.
Do you know a ship called the William of Hull or not?
No.
Nor do I know the ship mentioned.
Do you know that that ship and goods were arrested about the month of October in the 21st year of the Queen's Majesty's reign? By whom was she arrested?
I did arrest a certain ship in Hullhaven, the name of which ship I cannot now remember, nigh unto Master William G. Stayth, about the month of October last past, at the time of which arrest I left the defendant, then being mayor, in the Trinity Church, and after I'd arrested the ship, I found the defendant at home in his own house the same day at dinner.
I have heard say that about that month there were certain goods that were brought in a ship to the port of Kingston upon Hull, arrested by Richard Jackling, and that John Gregory, the defendant in the time of the arrest, was in the town.
I did hear that the goods being in the said ship about the 6th, 7th or 8th of October in the 21st year of Her Majesty's reign were attached and arrested by Richard Jackling and Henry Cocknage in Hullhaven, and that some part of the goods being in a catch were arrested without the knowledge and consent of John Gregory, then being mayor, and that the other part of the goods being in a ship and a keel, John Gregory, the defendant, gave his consent to the arresting thereof, provided that nothing were done whereby he, the defendant, might be touched by law, and he was in the town of Kingston upon Hull at the time of the arrest.
Who did first procure that the ship and goods should be arrested?
Master Wilson and Master Fairweather, two of the aldermen, did send for me. I then being in the church, who, when I came to them, did find them, Master Wilson and Master Fairweather, standing at Master Thornton's door with Master Thorneton, and they did command me to go and arrest the ship, whereupon one Henry Cocknage did deliver me a certain writing, which they said they had of Mr. Lewes, the town clerk, to arrest the ship.
William Wilson, John Fairweather of Kingston upon Hull, alderman, and one Henry Cocknage were the first that came to me and desired my advice how certain goods brought to the port of Kingston upon Hull in a pink called the William of Hull might be arrested, which goods they say were bought, bartered or exchanged at Karoulla within the jurisdiction of the Emperor of Russland by such persons as were not free of the fellowship of merchants for the discovery of new lands, desired me to set down my advice in writing, how, in my absence, the goods might be stayed and arrested.
The governor and company of Russie sent down Cocknage, one of their factors, to make an arrest of the goods in the ship, with a letter directed to me and others of the company for to aid and assist him with their advice and counsel for the doing thereof. Whereupon William Wilson, John Fairweather and Cocknage went to John Lewes, the Register of the Admiral Court in Kingston upon Hull, to have his advice, who, perusing the statute, did send unto Jackling by Wilson, Fairweather and Cocknage a note in writing, declaring the order and form how he should make the arrest, and further to this article I cannot depose.
Was not the same arrest made by the force of a warrant, made or written by John Lewes, the town clerk of Hull, directed to you, Richard Jackling? And was John Gregory, being then mayor of Hull, made privy to the warrant or to the arrest that was made by virtue of that warrant before the granting forth of the said warrant and arrest so made, or not? And what do you know touching the same?
The arrest was made by me by force of a note of writing, not sealed, but directed to me by John Lewes, the town clerk, which Master Thorneton told me was written by John Lewes. And I went presently, according to their commandment, and arrested the ship and goods, not making the mayor privy to the same. And I think verily that the mayor was not then made privy to the procuring of the writing or the arrest.
I think that the mayor of Hull was not made privy before I made the same note.
I did hear that the said arrest was made by force of a note or writing made by John Lewes, sent to Richard Jackling, and that I do think that John Gregory, the defendant, then mayor, was not made privy to the obtaining of the said warrant, and that some part of the goods were arrested before the defendant was made privy thereunto, so far as I think.
Do you know that Thornton, Wilson and Fairweather at the time of the arrest were, and yet are, free of the company of merchants or not? And were they the principal procurers of the said arrest, as you know or suppose?
Master Thornton, Master Wilson and Master Fairweather were the principal procurers of the said arrest, who at the time of the same arrest, as I heard it credibly reported, were free of the company of discovery of new trades.
I have heard say that Thornton, Wilson and Fairweather were free of that company of merchants.
I, William Wilson and John Fairweather were at the time of the making of the arrest, and yet are, free of the company of merchants for the discovery of new trades. And that I, as I remember, was no principal procurer of the arrest, and I likewise suppose that the Wilson and Fairweather were not.
Do you know, or have you heard, that after the arrest, the Lord President and Council of the North parts did write their letters to the said Lewes, Jackling, Thornton, Wilson, Fairweather, and Cocknage to release the arrest of the goods and ship, or else to appear before them and show cause to the contrary?
After the arrest, there was a process served on Cocknage directed from the Lord President and Council of the North, as I've heard say, for the delivery of goods, which report and hearsay I think to be true.
I have heard there was a process directed from the Lord President and Council of the North to Henry Cocknage and Richard Jackling to release the goods or else to appear before them.
I did hear of a letter sent and directed from the Lord President and Council of the North to Cocknage, Jackling and others for the discharge of an arrest made by the said Jackling and Cocknage of the goods. But whether the letters were for the discharge of the arrest made of any ship, I do not remember.
Did Lewes, Jackling, Thorneton, Wilson, Fairweather and Cocknage release the arrest or appear before the Lord President and Council according to the contents of the said process? And what do you know touching the same?
I'm not certain.
I did not discharge the said goods from any arrest, and neither I nor any of the other persons named in these interrogatories, to my knowledge, did appear before the Lord President and Council.
As far as I know, the goods were not released by force of the letters, and that none of the parties named appeared before the Lord President and Council to show cause to the contrary. I heard say that the goods arrested were taken and carried away before the delivery of the letters.
Okie dokie. That's the end of the depositions. Interestingly, everybody was in church when this kicked off, and they hooked out Jackling and left Gregory in blissful ignorance. I think he may have been difficult. Alan.
I'm just wondering whether, as an illiterate, he was actually being just set up as a patsy.
Well, he was certainly being bypassed, I think. Sarah.
Do we know then what happened? Do we know what happened as a result of this deposition? Whether what the outcome was?
No. That's one of the joys of Star Chamber. You take all the information, but I mean, I think as a sidelight on shipping practices in the North Sea, it's quite an interesting one. The book, which is called, I think, The Russia Company by a man called Hewardine, does go into this case at some length, but what he sees happening is that the whole of Hull joins together in a massive conspiracy to bypass and defraud the Russia Company. But I don't see that at all, because there are 3 aldermen there. Clarkson was also a member of the Russia Company, but he may have died by this time, I'm not sure. But there are 3 members of the company here, and they are certainly doing their best. Had Lewes been staying in town, had they not upset Gregory by ignoring him and just giving Jackling his orders, who knows? One person who didn't come out of this brilliantly is poor old Jackling. He retired, he resigned his position shortly afterwards. He'd had enough. And I think this case may have had something to do with it.
It's a bit of a thankless job by the sounds of things.
Well, there's all sorts of possibilities for bribery if you're the common officer. Also, if people want to arrest somebody for debt, they can pay you to do the arresting for them. So it's an earner. Alan.
I must admit, I'm reminded of an institution which lasted in Colchester, which is where I originate from, for probably from the late 18th century through to the early mid 20th, where the people locally of note, the larger landowners and businessmen, had an annual event which was called the Thieves' Dinner.
Yes. I mean, the vicar of Hull, a man called Melchior Smith, he wasn't, yes, he was the vicar at that time, Melchior Smith, upset quite a number of people with a sermon in which he said that a thief was not someone who lay by the wayside to steal, to rob you of your purse. A thief was a merchant who sat at home by the fire working out how to defraud his customers. And this really upset some people, as you can imagine. Well, it's an exhausting business, Sarah.
Do any of these people turn up? I mean, I'm assuming they do they? Do they turn up in other Star Chamber cases? Like, do you get the same people, like, appearing?
Well, some of the people were anybody here when we read the domestic dramas of the Cave and Dalton families? The first one I did, because some of the mayor and some of the aldermen would be the same people who were aldermen here. So they were witnesses, but they certainly appear in other cases. I mean, there's an enormous case in Exchequer in which they all have a small role. The fact is, I don't know. There are 100,000 documents, and the best index is the one I made.
Wow.
And I mean, I'm guessing at 15,000 cases, of which I have glanced at about 4,000. I mean, this thing's going to see me out. But Star Chamber is fun, provided you don't want to know what happens in the end.
Why is that? Did they just not? They didn't feel the need to make a record of what the outcome was?
No, the record was lost. What happened to Star Chamber was in 1641 to whatever, it was abolished as being tyrannous or something. And there were various sets of documents. Some were in what you might call deep storage in the tower, I believe. And they were just dumped and the door closed on them. And then there were the current ones, which were kept much closer to the seat of power, somewhere on Whitehall, I think. And they disappeared in one of the fires. So very little of Charles I's cases have survived because they were there. And the writ books are in the National Archives, but the verdict book is gone. Absolutely beyond recovery. A pile of ashes somewhere. So, oh, you haven't asked about the Emperor of Russland. In Hull, they called him John Vasilievich, but history knows him as Ivan the Terrible.
Ah, cool.
And it's highly likely that some of my aldermen did at some time meet him. I mean, the closest I've got is on one of them on a sledge heading into central Russia from a Baltic port, being chased by both Swedes and Lithuanians, I think, but that's another matter. they had a great deal of difficulty getting back. But whether Edward Cook actually had an audience with Ivan the Terrible, I don't know, but it is perfectly possible. Rachel.
So I guess because you just brought that up, what was Russia's relationship with the UK at this time, either politically or I guess in terms of mercantile endeavors with the company?
They sent ambassadors, which promptly got shipwrecked and had to be dug up, you know, taken in and dusted down. There were treaties, there was a tremendous amount of potential trade. But the problem is that what Russia wanted was guns and cannon. And officially, England was not going to supply them because the rest of Europe was deeply against modernizing Russia on the grounds that it was too big and too dangerous. But they had an enormous number of things that they wanted, which weren't weapons of war. You know, here we've got cloth and wine, but there were various other technical stuff that went. Also, they had a lot that we wanted. It was furs, shipbuilding material, pitch, tar, there was honey. For some reason, they had a lot of bees and endless high quality furs and timber and what was called train oil, which was oil from seals, whales, fish, a lot of dried fish, leather, the very, very best leather, the losh hides. So it was all pouring in. And as I say, there was a treaty, but all the time the Russia was looking to get a Baltic port, and they did, and then they lost it, and then they got it again, and eventually they built Petersburg there. But it was a source of potentially great riches, and yeah, very friendly terms. For the most part, except of course that Ivan the Terrible was mad as a hatter. You know, I mean, as homicidal maniacs go, he was pretty near the top. Alan.
To a certain extent, a role model for many succeeding Russian leaders.
Yes, but no. I don't think they've ever had one quite as insane as he was.
I think that's the scope for a whole new debate.
Yeah, but he, yes. Anyway, as I say, they were. John Vasilievich was the Tsar, and it was a terrible journey, but they made it in remarkably small and fragile ships from our point of view. Is there anything else, or shall we pull the plug on the recording?
We've probably given it a good thrashing. Thanks again for setting this up for us, Helen. It's been fascinating.
Well, no, thank you for reading for it. It really is extremely kind of you. Okay, well, all that then remains is to say goodbye to our listeners and to thank our generous and excellent readers for their work in bringing this to you. Bye-bye.
Bye.